inside job from the government. And logically, if you were going to use the social data, you could say that the buildings that were demolished could have been by other agents that were trying to set up the government to look like they were conspiring against their own people. So it is this mismatch between causality and theories in the engineering world, and kind of trying to take that into the development of the social and political world, and that's where you get the discordance.
Yeah, and I thought that was really kind of a brilliant statement that you just said, and you had written about before about how it literally the evidence behind the government being behind it is so circumstantial, and totally cherry picking on these anomalous types of things that happened, that you could easily make the case that another organization could have easily done the same thing to set up the government. I thought that was a pretty good point. Is there something specific? Have you ever used that argument, or have you ever tested that particular line of reasoning with a 9/11 truther?
No, I have not conducted first-hand research experience in this area in terms of testing that as a hypothesis as a psychologist. No, I have not. But from what I've seen in terms of the papers and the reviews that I've read and my own research, is kind of what you just alluded to there. And this is how conspiracy theories tend to work, because whenever anyone studies social phenomena, obviously we look at evidence and we have our own schemas and theories that we bring to the world. So the current banking crisis, one could address it from a Marxist, from a capitalist perspective. Of course, this is how the social world, to a certain extent, operates. But conspiracy theories, because it's more an amalgamation of different theories enmeshed into one, like you just said, what happens is they get an empirical fact, and then they kind of cherry pick the evidence and put a schema together, like a collage of data that points the argument into the realm of conspiracy theory, where equivocally at the same time you could use all that data to present another argument. So that is one area that is how the psychology of conspiracy theory works.
Okay. Now, what is it meant when you say an underdetermination of theory by evidence, and how does it relate to 9/11 truth or conspiracy claims?
This is mainly, again, it's a big paradigm in philosophy of science and philosophy of social science, which kind of gets to elements of truth and reality, because everyone that's looking at 9/11, they're trying to get to some aspect of truth, they're trying to get to some aspect of reality. We've got people that advocate that it was a conspiracy, we've got people that advocate that it wasn't a conspiracy. And what the underdetermination of theory kind of teaches everyone, especially in this kind of audience, because obviously we're all quite, to a certain extent, sceptical, is that no matter how much evidence is available, it's not ever sufficient enough to determine a theory. All we can ever really do, and this is obviously a big argument in philosophy of science, is kind of test theories as they come along and accept them tentatively and keep working on them. So the underdetermination of theory by evidence in 9/11 will suggest that no matter how much evidence one could propose that the government was responsible for it, or that the demolition was an inside job, there will never be sufficient evidence to basically make that argument in terms of, because obviously no one can predict the future, so we don't know what other evidence is around the corner. And this is how kind of conspiracy theory latches onto this as well, because they take anomalies and areas that haven't been explained, and then they put them together to point to a conspiracy theory, when really the underdetermination of theory by evidence kind of illustrates that whatever you're analysing, you can never be 100% accurate, and this is applicable to conspiracy theory, just as any other social phenomenon.
Oh, okay. Talk about the paradox in the government's ability to implement and cover up a plan, yet also be inept to have made mistakes for these small minority of people, these conspiracy theorists, to find.
This is an interesting paradox that you see occurring a lot of the time in conspiracy theories, whether it's meta-conspiracy theories of the New World Order, or predominantly 9/11, which is you're basically dealing with what appear to be two different agents that are responsible for the same conspiracy. So on the one hand, this agency, in this context we'll say it's the US government that's behind 9/11, are super efficient and super intelligent and have the resources and the planning foresight to execute this grand design of conspiratorial activity. Yet simultaneously and paradoxically, they're obviously not that sufficient, because they're quite inept in terms of leaving evidence around for everyone else to find. So it's kind of a telling paradox in this area, and it kind of points to the area of cognitive dissonance in psychology. psychology in terms of the logic there doesn't add up in terms of if they were so efficient in pulling this off, then why can't they be efficient in covering it up? This also relates to social chaos theory as well in terms of what conspiracy theories behind 9/11 propose. They propose areas where we've got social structures and processes that are usually random and out of the control of metastructures, but conspiracy theories would advocate that that's not how social processes work, because the government, in effect, can control all these areas and execute this plan. So it kind of runs against social chaos theory and against randomness in the social world, and it kind of has a perverted view of how social structures work, because basically they emphasize that at the top of the structure is an all-powerful agency that can control everything, and paradoxically they can't, because they can't cover it up. So that is one area where you really see the schema and the logic and the psychology of conspiracy theories really start to contradict themselves.
Yeah, and is there a connection to also, I guess I should ask, is there a relation with regard to this paradox and another kind of thought that a lot of skeptics have, which is if people such as Alex Jones or David Icke are trying to pull the wool, trying to uncover the massive conspiracy theory, then why haven't they been, sort of quote unquote taken out by the, New World Order or a government or something like that, and made it look like a car accident or some other kind of, accident?
Yes, I mean, that's completely true. I mean, this is an area, I mean, meta-conspiracy theories like that, to a certain extent, but they've got such a huge following. There's an area been done in social psychology in terms of the Messiah syndrome, where people always seek a political revolutionary, and people with certain psychological needs need to be kind of a messianic figure in a social revolution. And that, to a certain extent, is what you can see visible with Alex Jones and David Icke, where they're kind of, in their discourse and in their fan following, they're kind of like the heroes that have brought the truth home to everyone. And it kind of also leads to the point that you just made there, which is if they basically cotton onto the fact that it's a conspiracy, then why haven't they been dealt with? Because the powers that be are so powerful and all-controlling. So that's one contradiction. On the other hand, I'd like to add to that, which is this messianic figure, which is if there is a conspiracy and it's been secret for so long, it's quite funny, isn't it, how only these people have found it out. So it's kind of almost a messianic figure in that respect, in terms of here are the heroes that are going to unleash us and give us back our freedom from the government. So they're the deep psychological roots that go behind popular meta-conspiracy theories, and to a certain extent their mass followings.
Okay. Just a fun question here for you. Do you have a conspiracy theory that you find would be the most plausible?
To a certain extent, yes, and this is what I said earlier in the interview. It's got to be qualified in certain areas, and this is probably the JFK one, and that's only for a few factors, and that is history has now progressed. So 40 years on from there, or nearly 50 years on, it is conceivable that someone other than Lee Harvey Oswald killed JFK for whatever reasons one cannot be sure of. But just as the first premise that it wasn't a lone gunman is to a certain extent plausible. Now, if you compare that to 9/11 now, we haven't got any evidence whatsoever that it wasn't Al-Qaeda and that it was the government. But that's not to say that in 50 years' time, new evidence would emerge that would have to be extremely persuasive and demonstrate what figures in government were doing this and how they pulled it off. So it's kind of, you can see how some conspiracy theories could be conceivable, but it's again to do with the undetermination of theory by evidence, because only time will tell. So you can't really obviously hedge your bets and go in 100% and say this was a conspiracy theory. But if I were to pick one, I would say that the JFK one might be slightly plausible, only in the fact that it was probably more than one man. I won't get into any of the Cuban Castro issues and the mafia issues, but that Sure. could be one that's conceivable that it wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald by himself.
Sure, and that seems like, sort of you allude to, is if you introduce another gunman, you don't necessarily